Malcolm X has become a legendary figure of the civil rights movement, and his murder in 1965 is still highly controversial. The motives and identities of the assassins are still debated today. But what role did Malcolm X play in the civil rights movement, and what is it about him that continues to inspire people? Keep watching as we explore the life and activism of Malcolm X. Malcolm Little was born in Nebraska in 1925. Although slavery had been illegal in the state since 1861, the issue was a controversial one. The governor even vetoed it, but his veto was overridden. Politician J. Sterling Morton proclaiming, "By abolishing slavery, you abolish industry and prosperity." Unrest about race continued into the 20th century, and amid rising support of civil rights, there were still those who sided with racial segregation. In 1921, the first Nebraskan branch of the Ku Klux Klan was formed. As Malcolm's father, Reverend Earl Little, was a prominent figure in the Nebraskan civil rights movement and had founded the Omaha chapter of Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association, he started receiving threats from the members of the Ku Klux Klan. Fearing for the family's safety, the Littles moved to Lansing, Michigan when Malcolm was a baby. However, as Earl was a vocal and prominent supporter of black nationalism, he still suffered harassment from local white supremacists. Earl died in 1931 after being hit by a streetcar, and although the police ruled the death a suicide, many of those close to Earl suspected he had been murdered. Regardless of the truth, the possibility that his father had been killed due to his race and opinions had a marked effect on young Malcolm. Left alone with 7 children, Malcolm's mother struggled financially. Louise Little was a formidable woman. She was well-educated and a capable seamstress, working on the family smallholding and causing scandal by driving the family car. She was an activist in the home, striving to counteract any racist teaching that her children were subjected to in school. Earl's death, coinciding with the start of the Great Depression, along with continued racial harassment, took a serious toll on Louise. After her husband died, their insurance company refused to pay out, insisting that Earl had committed suicide, and Louise was forced to accept federal relief money. She was now subject to the whims of the state, and local officials pushed her to sell her land while withholding her relief checks. Louise then became pregnant out of wedlock, and her lover absconded as soon as he heard the news. In 1939, likely suffering from postpartum depression, she was forcibly committed to an insane asylum, and her children were fostered or sent to live with family members. Malcolm, ashamed of his mother's mental illness and believing that she had betrayed the memory of his father by becoming pregnant with another man, distanced himself from Louise. He began to excel in school and wanted to pursue a career in law, but ended his formal education after a teacher suggested that he should become a carpenter instead of a lawyer. At 16, he moved from the Michigan State Detention Home to live with his older half-sister in Boston. Ella Little was Earl's daughter from his previous marriage, and she profoundly impacted Malcolm. Later, he wrote in his autobiography that she was the first really proud black woman I had ever seen, and plainly proud of her very black skin. Ella was a prominent member of black society in Boston, dedicated to the civil rights movement, and lived in the most prosperous part of Roxbury. Despite Ella's positive influence, the big city soon inspired Malcolm's rebellious side, and he became involved in criminal activities. He got a job on the railroad, which introduced him to New York City, and he moved to Harlem. Soon, he was involved in drug dealing, street hustling, and thievery in Boston and Harlem. In 1946, at the age of 20, Malcolm was arrested for burglary and sentenced to 10 years in prison. And his time in prison saved him from a further life of crime when he met fellow inmate John Elton Bembry, whom Malcolm knew as Bimby. Bembry was a small-time criminal who, although an intelligent and educated man, had fallen into petty thievery during the mass unemployment of the 1930s. By the time Malcolm met him, Bembry had already been in and out of prison several times. Bembry was a clearly charismatic personality, and Malcolm noted that he commanded respect and attention through his intelligence. He wrote, "Normally, white prisoners wouldn't think of listening to Negro prisoners' opinions on anything, but guards even would wander over to hear Bimby on any subject." Bembry encouraged Malcolm to read and write again, a skill he had almost forgotten, and inspired him to use his intellect. The other impactful event that happened to Malcolm while incarcerated was a letter from his brother Reginald instructing him to stop smoking and give up eating pork. Although Malcolm assumed that his brother was concocting a scheme to get him released early from prison, Reginald was actually introducing him to the Muslim religion. During a prison visit, Reginald introduced Malcolm to the ideas of the Nation of Islam, which was a black nationalist movement that combined elements of Islam with the idea that there is inherent evil in white people. After the meeting, the rest of Malcolm's siblings who had converted to the Nation of Islam wrote to Malcolm, urging him to accept the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, the movement's religious leader. Malcolm spent the remainder of his time in prison studying history, philosophy, literature, and science. By the time he was paroled in 1952, he was a different man than the one arrested for burglary. Self-educated and a convert to Islam, Malcolm changed his surname from Little to X. After his release, Malcolm threw himself into the world of the Nation of Islam, meeting its founder, Elijah Muhammad, and planning new temples in New York, Philadelphia, and Boston. He helped found the newspaper Muhammad Speaks and rose rapidly to become the founder and minister of Boston Temple No. 11. After a lifetime of being targeted by white supremacists, Malcolm embraced ideas of black supremacy and the racial doctrine of the inherent evils of whites. Malcolm became an active recruiter for the Nation of Islam, and his charisma and articulate public speeches made him a prominent figure in the increasingly popular civil rights movement. In 1959, Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad became the subject of a documentary entitled The Hate That Hate Produced, and Malcolm was cast as the angry black man, a symbol of violent rejection of the integration movement. Due to his extreme stance, Malcolm became an object of fear and hatred amongst whites and liberals who backed integration. However, Malcolm was able to use his influence to help change the labels of African Americans from Negro and colored to Black and Afro-American. Because of his views, Malcolm did not always see eye to eye with other civil rights leaders, particularly Martin Luther King Jr. Unlike Malcolm, King had grown up in a stable family in the South. He was 15 before he experienced the racial integration of the North and was shocked by how peacefully the two races could mix. While the two men respected each other, they clashed regarding the aims and methods of the civil rights movement. King was striving for racial integration, creating equality and mutual respect between the two races by working together. Malcolm wanted the two races to be separate and promoted the idea that blacks were superior to whites and that African Americans should only help each other. Where King favored nonviolent resistance and peaceful protest, Malcolm advocated militant self-defense against white aggression, urging his followers to defend themselves by any means necessary. Malcolm repeatedly and unsuccessfully invited King to Nation of Islam meetings, eager for him to hear the teachings of Elijah Muhammad. In 1963, Malcolm publicly criticized King's doctrine, declaring, "The only revolution in which the goal is loving your enemy is the Negro Revolution." The next year, King used Malcolm as a warning to those opposed to the civil rights movement, stating, "If tangible gains are not made soon all over the country, we must honestly face the prospect that some Negroes might be tempted to accept some oblique path as that Malcolm X proposes." It was in the early 60s that a rift began to form between Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad. Muhammad had grown worried about Malcolm's growing influence, and Malcolm heard rumors that Muhammad was conducting extramarital affairs with young women in the Nation of Islam, which went directly against its teachings. In 1963, Malcolm was suspended from the Nation of Islam, but soon broke away from the group completely to start his own organization. Although Malcolm wanted to include black people of all religious denominations, he was still dedicated to Islam and named his new organization Muslim Mosque Incorporated. In 1964, Malcolm decided to make his pilgrimage to Mecca and went to his half-sister Ella for money to fund his trip. Ella had also broken with the Nation of Islam and gave Malcolm the funds he needed. During his journey, Malcolm was aided by Muslims of many different races and began to reassess the teachings of the Nation of Islam. He began to see how people of different races could coexist peacefully. Back in the U.S., Malcolm was keen to establish ties with the more militant black activists and strove to revitalize the black nationalist movement. In 1964, he founded the Organization of Afro-American Unity, a secular group concerned with civil and international human rights. To promote his cause, Malcolm traveled to Africa, the Middle East, and Britain, although he was denied entry to France as he was labeled an undesirable. During his time, Malcolm, his family, and his associates were constantly harassed, and the black Muslims issued assassination threats to their former member. While threatened by the Nation of Islam, Malcolm worked to mend his relationships with the more moderate black civil rights leaders. In February 1965, King was arrested, along with hundreds of voting rights activists. King had marched with other protesters to Selma, which was barricaded by state troopers. Although many young radicals were willing to confront the troopers, King led his followers to kneel in prayer and then turn back. This pacifism cost King many followers who, like Malcolm, wanted to take decisive action. After King's arrest, Malcolm traveled to Selma, where he met with King's wife, telling her, "I didn't come to Selma to make his job difficult. I really did come thinking that I could make it easier. If the white people realize what the alternative is, perhaps they will be more willing to hear Dr. King." Later that month, Malcolm was shot by 3 men while speaking at the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem. A member of the Nation of Islam, Talmadge Hayer, was arrested on the scene, and 2 other members were identified and arrested a few days later. Despite Hayer testifying in court that the other 2 men arrested were not involved in the plot, all 3 were convicted. The police stated that the assassination was the result of an ongoing dispute between Malcolm and the Nation of Islam. However, many believed that the U.S. government had something to do with the murder. Although this was never proven, Hayer's supposed associates were exonerated in 2021. Furthermore, Malcolm, like many of the civil rights leaders, was under near-constant surveillance by the federal and New York state governments. Later, a letter sent from J. Edgar Hoover to the New York FBI office was made public. Dated June 6, 1964, the letter said the department should do something about Malcolm X. Malcolm's death was a huge blow to the African-American community, but his legacy lives on. Malcolm's focus on black nationalism and self-determination was a new direction for the civil rights movement. Rather than advocating integration and assimilation, he promoted the belief that African Americans could take control of their own destinies. He strove for black Americans to create their own businesses and opportunities to throw off the systematic oppression they had suffered. In his early activism, he felt that violence could only be faced with violence and that the civil rights movement should be fueled by anger rather than hope. The fact that he was killed as he had begun to reconcile his extreme views with some of the more moderate leaders of the civil rights movement was not just a great loss for African Americans, but also a loss for America as a whole. What are your thoughts on the views and assassination of Malcolm X? Let us know in the comments below. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about the civil rights movement, check out our book, African-American History, a captivating guide to the people and events that shaped the history of the United States. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.